Civilians, especially women and children, are registered among the cases for sexual violence in conflict areas. Now, sometimes this is a systematic ploy for political objectives, rape, mutilation, sexual slavery, among many things. Welcome to Newsnight. Sexual violence in conflict. To talk to us about that tonight is Dr. Chris. Are you a doctor?
Yes.
You're right.
Not a medical doctor.
But, okay, a professional doctor. Dr. Chris Dolan from the Refugee Law Project. Well, before we dive right into it, let's just talk about what the Refugee Law Project does.
Thank you. Yes, Refugee Law Project is a community outreach project of the School of Law. It was first set up in 1999 to provide legal aid to refugees and asylum seekers. And over the last 15, 16 years has grown to also do a lot of work on justice issues, transitional justice issues, and within that also sexual violence. We work mainly with refugees, and we encounter a lot of cases of sexual violence in general.
In general. So sexual violence in conflict, many would hear that and say, okay, so is it the same old song that feminists are all about, rape and gender issues, or is this a bigger, broader issue? First, give us an insight of what we're looking at when we say sexual violence in conflict.
Sexual violence in conflict covers many things. So the thing that immediately springs into people's minds is rape.
Yes.
But it can also include things like sexual slavery, enforced prostitution, being made pregnant against your will, having an abortion against your will, being made to dance naked in front of villagers, genital tortures, mutilations. So it's a very wide range of forms that can take place.
Yes. Today we specifically want to talk about documenting, investigating and prosecution of these cases. But before I go into that, when I was reading research today, they were talking about how for so long people brushed it off as, oh, this is another feminist issue. Women are fighting for yet another issue. But really when you look at it, you mentioned that it's not just about women and children. You have cases of boys and men. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, when we look at the cases that we see in Kampala, people who walk through our doors, and when they walk through our doors we don't know what they're looking for. So we screen them and we ask questions about experiences of sexual violence. And what we find is that amongst refugees here in Kampala, about 2 out of 3 women have had an experience of sexual violence, and about 1 out of 3 men. So it's a very high number of women, but also the number of men is much higher than most people expect. Normally, if I ask people, what do you think it might be, they'll say maybe 1 in 100 or 1 in 20, but not 1 in 3. So, you know, that's something that has given us a lot of pause for thought. As you say, I wouldn't phrase it quite as, you know, this is a feminist issue that was marginalized. I think women's rights activists have really done a lot of work for the last 20, 30 years to draw attention to the issue of sexual violence. But I think it has been done in a way that has also it's failed to draw attention to the fact that men and boys are also quite seriously affected.
Today the Refugee Law Project spoke to the UPDF personnel, medical personnel, you had police, and you were seeking to, you know, address the issue of documenting, investigating, and prosecution, you know, of these cases, sexual violence cases. Let's talk about the statistics. I mean, documenting, what are the constraints, first of all, in getting all that research out there, or the numbers registered?
I think the biggest constraint is that currently none of the big institutions are systematically screening for these experiences. You know, the easiest place to screen would be, like now with the Sudanese coming in from South Sudan. You know, that would be an opportunity to screen and really put some figures to the issue. Where we have done small pilots of that, you know, we've found actually people do disclose. But what happens when you don't do that at the beginning, it then tends to get hidden away, and sometimes you can wait months, sometimes years before people actually disclose what happened. So that's one of the biggest obstacles. If you're still in the country where it happened, then obviously there are a lot of fears by the victims or the survivors that they're going to get further harassment, persecution by the people that did it to them in the first place. So there are a lot of security issues around documenting these matters.
Yeah, investigating. I mean, if for some countries, for some of the refugees that come to you, their countries, their home countries, or where these atrocities happened, are still in conflict. So what form of investigation is happening? Investigation is happening if there's still conflict where you can investigate.
Well, I think in many conflict situations it's almost impossible to document, and certainly to document safely for both for the victims but also for the investigators. So that's one of the reasons why we lack the statistics. It is also one of the reasons why I think we should be paying more attention to refugee populations. I think they have very high concentrations of survivors because it's one of the big reasons why people leave their country in the first place. But we need to be doing it more systematically.
Okay. So just to, as we are wrapping up, what you discussed today, what was the way forward that you got out of it, or what were some of the cases that they would, or their case that they were putting across the UPDF, the police, and the medical personnel against this issue or for this issue?
Yeah, so several people ask me why are we looking at training on investigation in a country which is not at conflict as such. But I think it's a step towards how this should be handled in future. UPDF has very large numbers of peacekeepers deployed in a whole range of different conflict settings where sexual violence is taking place as we speak, and so it's important that the UPDF as an institution is able to document, investigate in an appropriate professional manner that gets the evidence at the time when it's still fresh, and that can then be brought to bear on prosecutions at a later date. It may not be immediate, it may be at a future point. And
the training, as you saw, will yield good results in the future?
I think there's a very high level of commitment, both within the UPDF, within the Uganda Police Force, and this is building on work that we have done over a number of years, and I think the interest is there and the commitment is there, and we're also grateful to the Foreign and Commonwealth Office who are enabling this training. But yes, I think it's a way of moving forward. We now have an international crimes division in Uganda. So for the future, it's imperative that the police also have the right skills to investigate and document.
So it's one step from lip service to actually getting into action. That is Dr. Chris Dolan from the Refugee Law Project. More details, of course, on our social media. The hashtag is NTV News. This has been Newsnight.